An Australian government study says that 40% of Australians are going to experience a mental health issue in their lifetime. So what can we do to look after our mental health?
I think there's a big spotlight on the stigma at the moment, and I think it is slowly starting to break down.
We don't just believe in management, we believe in transformation. And that's really the goal, to be able to reckon, I'm angry. Why am I angry? I'm triggered. Why am I triggered?
I've pushed into the mental health side of things quite profoundly. That is where a lot of people ignore.
We have special guest Shane, who's on the podcast with us today. He's an accomplished athlete and he's passionate about mental health.
It's becoming a lot more popular in professional sport now. The mental side of it needs to be just as important as the physical aspect of it.
At the end of this podcast, we have a great discussion about some practical things that people can do to get help with their mental health. So make sure to stick around for that. And it's good to be on the pod again.
Back in the pod.
We've got Pastor Nate, who's a regular.
I am.
Absolutely.
I have not yet done one without me here. We should try that.
Yeah, we're done.
Did we?
We did one with Darren.
That's right, we did.
And we did one with
Very good.
Rach and Jez. So I've done a couple.
That. Maybe I only.
But you're mostly regular.
I'm mostly regular.
We need our lead pastor on the pod. So it's good that you're regular.
I can make such like a church attendance joke right now, but I won't. I won't do that. It's not the right medium.
But we've got a special guest. Another special guest on the pod today. We've got Shane. And you might think it's Van Az, but I have recently learned that it's Fun Us.
Yes.
Which is cool. This is
great.
awesome.
Yeah. That's my Dutch heritage coming through there.
Dutch heritage.
Yeah. So in obviously in Dutch, a V is actually an F.
Okay.
So people would say it's van, but it's actually fun.
Yeah.
And then AS is actually us.
What a good last name.
Yeah.
Fun Us.
Yeah, Fun Us, yeah.
It sounds Dutch.
Yeah, it is Dutch. It actually means from the ashes, which is so cool.
Come
Oh,
on.
wow.
Yeah.
Like a phoenix.
Yeah,
Nice.
like phoenix rising from the ashes. But then a lot of people also, associate it with an ass, as in like a donkey.
Yeah.
And, people find them funny. So
I'd never thought to nickname you Donkey or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you were saying that was your nickname.
That was my
from
nickname in high school, yeah, donkey.
Well, they'll find anything.
What was your high school nickname?
I don't think I had one. It was just a Simo.
Just Simo.
Yeah, my surname's Gru. So I was like, I'm wide open for some
Wide
funny.
open, man. So much scope.
There might have been some inappropriate ones, but no consistent ones that someone could call me.
Yeah.
But it's good to have you on the podcast today, man.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
A lot of people might not know who you are.
Yep.
Which they might be like, whoa, who's this random guy on the podcast? But you're not random. You've been part of our church for a couple of years now.
Yeah, we worked it out the other day. I think it's just under 2 years now. We've been part of C3.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, April of 2023.
You and your incredible wife, Chantel.
My wife, Chantel, yeah.
Yeah?
We love it. We had been searching for a while in terms of a kind of new church that we wanted to get involved in. I've been involved in church for many, many years. And obviously I come from South Africa, as most people would have worked up by now.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, you just said you had Dutch heritage, so maybe people didn't know you are actually from
Dutch
South.
settlers came to South Africa and did the whole great trek from Cape Town all the way through. So that was my heritage,
Yeah,
the Afrikaans heritage coming through there, which is
Wow,
great.
there you go.
Yeah.
And so when did you move to Australia?
So I actually arrived in Australia in February of 2020. So just before COVID hit.
Just before COVID.
I was meant to come for a very close friend's wedding. And then COVID hit and I actually met Chantel.
Wow, there you go.
I was meant to go home. COVID hit, kind of extended my stay a little bit, met Chantel, and I was like, I'm not going home. This is the love of my life. So,
come
so
on.
it wasn't an original plan to be in
I
Australia?
had a suitcase that I came with and that was all I had on me. So,
Wow.
Yeah, everything was back
That's
home
wild.
and I left it all behind.
Come
What a
on.
love story.
What a love story. Yeah, it's
So
really cool.
romantic, man. It's like,
Actually-
when's this getting released, Chris? Just after Valentine's Day.
Actually,
Perfect.
do you want to share the story of how you and Chantel met?
Oh yeah. So I was since I was now staying for a little while with COVID, I was doing some work for the friend's company. They had their own company, and they were dealing in landscaping. And Chantel's parents were a client, and I actually ended up going to their house to do a job the one day. And Chantel was actually working from home because of COVID. And she came out to tell me what to do, and ever since then has been telling me what to do ever since.
There you go.
So you're at the backyard, like sweating, shoveling.
Yeah.
Like,
Shirt off, guns out.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'd
Santa
love to
guns
say
out
yes
on
to that, but
display.
I was not the shirt off kind of guy.
that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you hadn't planned to be in Australia.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And I know that you're saying that back in South Africa, you pretty invested in quite a large church over in South Africa, doing lots of cool stuff. You did youth and stuff for a long time.
Yeah. I was involved in youth ministry for many, many years at the church I was there. It was known as Kloof Harvest, but it's now changed its name to
Something else.
yeah, something else. I can't even remember what it is now. Anyway, I think it's like anyway, they changed their name. Great church. They led by they were head pastors Roger and Yvonne, and now their son Hilton, who was actually a big part of me becoming a Christian.
Yeah, wow.
When I was 18.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
He was a big part of that. So shout out to Hilton Greg. He's a really anointed guy as well. Incredible worship leader. He's got the favor of God in his life, man. I've never seen anyone like it.
That's awesome, man.
So
how long you been married for now?
been married 2 years now, 2.5 years almost. Yeah.
Come on. Awesome.
So we moved pretty quick. We were engaged after a year of dating,
right.
which
You're
is
solid, you know.
good.
Not
And then
like,
married-
it's not like a fortnight or something.
No. Yeah. I actually knew someone that I studied with that she met a guy, and I think it was like 6 weeks later,
Whoa.
got engaged.
That's quick.
And then were married after 3 months. And the latest I heard was that marriage didn't last very long, but yeah.
I've heard opposite stories though too. I've
I
heard
have.
people that have got married real quick and they've been married a long, long time. And I guess it's
Well,
the exception,
Steve-
not the norm, I guess.
Steve
you know.
Jobs, his parents,
Yeah.
his dad was working for the Navy, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And he moved cities and met his wife and said, I'm going to marry you in 14 days. And literally 14 days later, they got married, and they were married for 43 years before he passed
Wow.
away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so, I mean,
14 days. He's
14
a man
days.
of action though, that guy.
Fortnight.
Yeah.
See, it's not about the fortnight.
yeah.
Okay, so married to Chantel, married for a couple of years, been in Australia for a few years now.
Yep.
What are you doing for work now? What's your vocation, career, stuff you're doing?
Yeah, so now I'm in probably the most unique industry I thought I'd ever be in. I'm now a coal miner. Can you believe it? Yeah.
Hey, come on.
So I operate the heavy machinery out at a mine in Singleton. And that is very different to what I ever thought I would do growing up, and what I've been doing for most of my life, actually. So it's a unique challenge for me, but it's one that I've made purely based on the fact that I know it's going to support my family. Obviously, my wife and I are wanting to start our own family, and I know it's an occupation that will bring that security of finances and things
Yep.
like that. So, yeah, it's not my passion. I'm not going to lie. Sorry, shout out to my employees.
All the coal miners watching this are like, no, what do you
Yeah, it's not my passion, but it's a season.
What is your passion? What
Man, so I've
what
got
gets you excited?
I've got two real passions, I would say. My first being, and I was very lucky enough to make it a big part of my life, was sport. I had the opportunity to be involved in professional sport back in South Africa
Oh,
for
so it was
many
professional
years.
back in South Africa.
Yeah, I made it my career for many years, and I was involved in professional soccer, which is the most incredible blessing I could have ever asked for, to be honest. I don't think I was any more talented than a lot of people. Just had the favor of God, but He just put me in connection with the right people in the right places. And
I mean, you must have been all right though. Like, you know,
yeah, I
You
mean,
must have. Yeah,
it's
you
not,
can't
it's
just
not like
fake
just
that.
kick and giggle.
no, kick and giggle. There's a good joke, but I won't say that. Maybe. But yeah, no. Look, I think like I said, I have some talent, but no more talented than probably 80% of the guys that didn't make it. You know.
Yeah.
But when God has a plan for you, He has a plan for you.
Yeah. So how long did you do professional soccer for?
So when I ended my high school career, I managed to come out and play for 3 years. And then I took a bit of a break. It's very political with most sports. And I thought, I just needed a break coming out of high school. I was young. And I just felt like it just wasn't working the way I wanted to work. And so I took a break. I felt like God was saying He had a different plan for me at the time. And then I went and I actually studied teaching. 'cause
right.
that's my other passion.
Come on.
is children and the youth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love seeing the youth thrive. The way that I think God intended youth to thrive.
Yeah, man.
So, I have a real passion for youth.
Yeah, cool.
In this country, not only in this country, but just in general.
Yep.
So I went to study teaching, and I got involved in a private school in South Africa, and I combined my passions of sport and teaching, and I was the director of sport for 700 kids.
Wow.
Come on, that'd be
That's
fun.
awesome, man.
Yeah, so it was really, really cool. Loved it, thoroughly enjoyed it, and I did that for 5.5 years.
Yeah, sweet.
And then
Do your teaching qualifications not transfer?
I was about to say
they do. I kind of don't feel that that's where God wants me at this point.
yeah.
I don't feel that that's where God's leading me at this particular time, if I'm honest. I just feel like God's got a different plan. What that is, I'm not sure, but I just somehow don't feel like that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've kind of trusted that gut feeling that God's
Yeah.
got me
Totally.
and will lead me through. So,
It's good.
so
man.
yeah, so I did that for 5.5 years, and then moved across back into professional sport. Got the opportunity to connect, but in a slightly different role where it was I played and I also got involved in the management of the team. So I ran the marketing and the management.
This is back in South Africa?
Yeah, back in South Africa for the team I played for, which was really different, but such a good challenge. I loved it.
That's
and
cool,
yeah,
man.
like I said, God just had his hand on everything there.
And so were you doing that up until you came to Australia?
Yep. Yeah. I was contracted, even when I came to South Africa, I was contracted for the team that I was involved with. And then obviously COVID came and professional sport really took a dive. And there was a whole lot of politics. But I think the nice thing about it for me was that with that, the season came to an end abruptly because of COVID, which meant my contract ran out, which meant I wasn't obligated to stay.
Yeah.
So,
And you're still playing some high level soccer here?
yeah,
like relatively
I was.
high level here in Australia now, though?
Yeah, I was playing MPL, which is obviously the highest one that you can, other than A-League in the area up until last year. I've actually now with work commitments and things like that, just kind of taken a step back. And I love soccer, so I don't know if I'll ever be able to give it up. So I'm just playing with friends now, which is great.
Yeah, sweet, man.
So yeah.
So teaching, sport, passions, and you've actually got your own podcast.
Yeah.
That you've
Shout
kind
out.
of
Yeah.
Come on.
podcast
Shout
shout
out.
out. That's been happening for about a year now.
Yeah, almost a
Similar
year.
time that we've been doing this.
Yeah,
podcast,
literally.
actually.
I think it was you guys are about to
same
start yours,
week.
and I was, man, this is insane.
And what's that podcast called? What's that about?
So yeah, I do a podcast called Leave a Light On podcast with my co-host Chev, and we actually started it. The whole kind of, I would say, gear that we have towards it is mental health.
Yeah.
And developing a strong community where people can share their struggles, because it is such a big space that people are kind of grappling with nowadays. And so we've really been blessed in the fact that we've had some really incredible people come through and share. Our whole premise is people sharing their stories of struggle and how they've come through the other side.
Yeah, wow.
That's really cool.
So it's real practical. It's we do have a lot of professionals that we get on to give their professional opinion, but I think for us it's I tend to look at it in the biblical sense that, like, God always says your most powerful thing is your testimony.
Yeah.
And people's testimony is what is going to affect change. And it's personal, and people relate with personal stories. And so
true.
Absolutely.
we tend to just get people to tell their stories
It's powerful, man.
and how they came through it on the other side. So
Stories are powerful. Hey?
yeah.
And you
so-
can't deny if someone's standing in front of you and they're like, I'm transformed because of this.
Yeah.
This,
That's right.
this happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take that away from someone. You can't deny that. You can't be like, oh, science says no or whatever. It was like, no, that
Yeah.
person's transformed.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I guess it's a podcast that just opens up the conversation around mental health.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Our whole goal is to break the stigmatism that you can't speak about it, that
Yeah.
it's weak to speak, if you can put it that way.
Yeah.
And so we are saying we want to build a community of people that feel comfortable sharing their weaknesses, their struggles, and in a safe environment to do so, and then allowed to then work through it.
Do you think the stigma is breaking down?
Look, I think there's a big spotlight on the stigma at the moment, and I think it is slowly starting to break down, but I think it's going to be a long time before that is. And I think that's the whole, the new generation. What is it that Gen X is what
Gen
else?
get
Z,
confused.
Gen
Gen
Alpha
Z.
has come, but I think
Wait,
I'm
we're
Gen.
millennial?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're millennial.
Yeah, but that the millennial crosses the boundaries of like X and
Yeah.
Y, and
Yeah.
it's
Chris,
like
do
a
you
collective.
know what generation are you on part of?
Oh, I'm right on the border of millennial and Gen X.
Gen X.
Okay.
So Gen X is the next one?
No, sorry.
No.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
yeah, you be Z.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gen
I think
Z.
I'm
That's
on the border
millennial.
of X and Y.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 37. So I think I'm millennial as
You
well.
two are the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're millennials.
Yeah.
And I'm just on the.
Yeah.
You're still millennial.
I'm still millennial, but I'm on the border of X.
Upper end of the millennial?
Yeah, so I'm 84, and that's
Okay.
like right on the.
Oh, yeah.
so then there's
Oh yeah! Oh,
there's Gen
oh.
Z and then there's Gen Alpha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gen
yeah,
Alpha
yeah.
is the
Starting
latest
over
one.
again.
Yeah, which is the digital generation, you know?
Digital
Glass.
generation. I thought I was the
Generation
digital
glass.
generation. I had my Nintendo 64.
Well, we
grew
were
up
the
on
most
there.
informed generation ever.
Most
I
informed.
like to think that. You know?
because we came in the
positive,
age
I'll take it.
of the internet.
Yeah.
So we became the most informed generation to ever obviously walk the earth.
I
up
remember-
until
I don't know
us.
that it's helped us that much, if I'm
I re-
honest.
Yeah, well, yeah. You're right. I remember someone saying recently, like, we have more information at our fingertips than any other civilization in the history of the universe. Right? That's insane, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Collectively, almost as well. Like if you
Yeah,
collect
collectively.
all historical information,
yeah.
what's being produced almost annually is somehow comparable. That's
Yeah.
wild.
But what we're lacking, so there's a lot of information, but people are lacking wisdom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a young gen, like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they'll have all the information, but what they're hungering for is like, I need to know how to apply this information in my life in a correct way. And the internet won't necessarily give you wisdom. So,
Totally different
Yeah.
topic, but that's why there's a radical shift needed in the education system.
Yeah.
You like as a previous teacher, right? Like teaching, you used to be the fountain of content, and now you're not, right?
No.
Not even close to it.
No.
And
Well,
yet,
yeah, that's the whole new. Is it Steiner that does it?
Steiner is
Steiner
different.
schools are looking
the
at
Steiner
different
schools
models,
or different
but-
models where basically it's like they give you all your curriculum on a technology, based your iPad or laptop, and you have a teacher that's there, but they don't physically teach you.
so I
just-
think shift has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just there to kind of, if you struggle with a particular thing, they can then help you through that.
That's
But
right. Like teach you
ChatGPT is
how
another
to
one.
learn, not
Yeah.
just teach you the content to remember. It's
Yeah.
the process of learning the articulate. Like it's
Yeah.
totally different.
We're going down a rabbit hole.
But yeah, that's a whole
massive
nother
shift.
That's a
story.
whole
Yeah.
nother rabbit hole. I'm interested.
Another episode.
So the last couple of podcasts, we've been chatting about health, physical health. Like we're interested in the holistic person that God's created us to be. You know, we're not just a physical body. We're not just a spirit. We're not just a soul. But it's all integrated. It's all working together. It all affects each other. And we've had Simon Ashley on a couple of podcasts ago talking
was great.
about. Yeah, did you listen to it?
I listened to his one. He was great. Yeah. Shout out, Simon. Well done.
I mean, it could have been 3 episodes. We might try and get Simon
I think
on
we'll get
again.
him back.
I think we'll get him
definitely.
back.
Yep.
Yeah.
But about the importance of physical health but your approach mentally to it, you know, is going
Yeah.
to actually shift that, which is really cool. Piece of wisdom at the end of that podcast. And then we chatted amongst the three of us with Daz, or yourself, myself and Daz, just about our little journeys and our stories, which is
Our little
interesting.
journeys, not experts.
Not experts.
By the way, I love the fact that you guys are doing that whole accountability thing with your journeys.
Yeah,
of-
ticks last night.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. Come
It's
on.
really cool. It's I mean, it
could be-
there's massive
maybe it's-
research into saying that's that's how a lot of people achieve goals and that they're setting out to
Absolutely.
achieve is having someone that they can be accountable to. And that is why a lot of people, especially in the physical side of things, like if they go to gym, if they have a personal trainer, they
yeah.
find that they achieve
Yeah, that's
better
right.
results than if they just go on their own.
Just trying to do it yourself.
So shout out to you guys. That's amazing.
For the next round, maybe we should open the slots to anyone that wants to join.
Start a pod WhatsApp.
We'll do 75
Proven
hard
podcast
next
challenge.
or maybe like half hard. 75 half hard.
How's your Daniel fast going, by the way?
Oh, I did that for like 2 days.
Yeah, 2 days?
Yeah.
And then,
It was like,
I mean, hey,
thanks
2
for-
days is
thanks-
still good.
thanks for bringing that up, man. Because what happened was, and I think this is important,
I knew to ask because you and I chatted about it long before you did it.
I started.
Yeah.
We come straight off holidays, right?
Yeah.
Come off holidays from Fiji, and
Yeah.
where I'm eating the biggest breakfast every morning, like buffet. I'm talking.
See my buffet well.
I was having lunch at breakfast. That was my goal.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner in one sitting.
So we come back straight from Fiji and we're doing this healthy thing and everyone's like, this is my goal. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do Daniel diet. I wanted to go hardcore, but then I didn't have like a planning period between when I came back. And so I just like nearly passed out one day and I was like, yeah, I didn't plan for this. I need to go on whatever they're doing. And so I just like put that aside. Like, yeah, I'm just going to go on
Ours was a less intense.
A less intense plan.
Less intense plan.
That's great.
But I want to bring it back to the conversation about health and stuff. Obviously, you got the podcast about mental health, and I'm curious to understand or know a bit about your story. Like, what kind of sparked that desire or passion behind the podcast?
Well, so I went through quite a traumatic childhood without getting too much into it. I had a really tough moment when I was about 15, 16 years old that I really struggled with that affected me in a big way. And I didn't realize it until much later in life. I kind of swept it under the rug.
Yep.
I threw everything I could into my sport, into my physical side of things, if I can put it to that.
Like all the energy.
Yeah, all my energies. I kind of left the mental side of things. And it was great because physically I was at the peak where I could possibly be. I was training well. And to be honest, genetically, shout out to my parents for this. I was really blessed genetically. I was sharing a story with you guys before we started that when I would go see a dietitian for the team, which it was compulsory. We had to get our dietitian and a nutritionist plan and everything like that.
Yeah.
I would walk in and he would look at me and he would basically just say, all right, you can go.
You're right.
Yeah. And I would be like, what do you mean? He's like, they talk about your metabolic age, which is basically like how fast your body processes, how fast your body or how young your body thinks you are.
Yeah, rather than like your actual age. Yeah,
and at 32 years old, my body thought I was a 12-year-old boy.
Wow.
How did they figure that out?
So they do a whole lot of testing that in terms of how fast you process your food, your blood, all that kind of stuff. And then they work out weight, height, all that kind of thing. And then they work out what your estimated metabolic age is. So basically at 32 years old, I was processing food as fast as I would a 12-year-old boy.
Wow.
Wild.
So a dietitian looked at me and said, basically, eat what you want, you're good. As long as it's obviously within reason. But I didn't need to be on a diet.
Don't go on Fiji buffet every day.
Yeah.
So like our conversation with Simon on the previous podcast where he's like trying to help people get healthy, physically fit. You're good. Like you were like, it's not, that hasn't been an issue for you.
If anything, I was probably a little bit underweight on what I needed to be.
Good bulk needed.
So, but at the same time, I had to be very careful. I was a goalkeeper. I had to be very careful in terms of how much weight I carried because it was a big component of obviously what I was doing. So in my head, I was like, well, if anything, I would rather be slightly underweight than overweight. So I didn't really see it as a massive deterrent for me.
So physically you're good, but you, like you were saying before, you were kind of using part of that with like your energy going into professional sport that you were starting to talk about was masking some mental stuff.
Under the
hood.
So I was carrying a lot of this trauma from when I was 15 and 16. And it really did affect me mentally in terms of how I would perform. So if I had a bad training session, I didn't know how to process that. It would affect me moving forward from there. If I didn't, come out of it or somehow do something that would then snap me out of that to get back into my routine of getting better, that slump could last for ages. And I've always been that confidence kind of person. Like if my coach has confidence in me and I feel like everyone is like on board and we're all happy, and then I'm thriving. That's my environment to thrive. Like I'm good. But if we hit a hard patch as a team and I'm feeling like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm really hard on myself in that aspect.
Yeah, okay.
And mentally that would affect everything.
Yeah, right.
And so I learned to figure, and it's becoming a lot more popular in professional sport now, is that the mental side of it needs to be just as important as the physical aspect of it. So a lot of teams are actually employing psychologists and counselors and therapists full time to be involved in the team and offering these.
That's probably never a thing as much as it is now.
Oh, so I think it's changed radically in the last probably 20, 30 years. Absolutely.
Big time.
Yeah.
Do you think, like getting back to your story, Shane, like obviously we're all forever, we're going to be journeying through our kind of mental health, how we like all these kind of different aspects of ourselves. Like, was that a long journey for you? Is it something you're still going through? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, at what point did you realize like, oh, something under the hood here is not going too well? I guess because a lot of people might like in their circumstances hold trauma from their childhood or something, but not even be aware of it until it like starts to leak out almost. Or
I think
there
for
a
me,
noticing point? You know,
I think I started to notice it. I've always been pretty bubbly, charismatic guy. I love being around people. I thrive in environments where it's social. Like some of my core strengths are like I love relating. I love just connecting with people.
Yeah.
It's definitely something I think that God has given me that characteristic, just to connect with people. So I thrive in that environment of just connecting. And I think when I was kind of coming through, I've also, based on the childhood trauma that I kind of came through, for me it was a big thing. I thrived in a relationship. And I mean that in a romantic sense. So I needed to be in a relationship in order to feel like I was okay, like I was
that self-value
self-valued,
built on.
And I guess, that kind of came to the forefront then when I find something like that, where I was in a relationship, my immediate response would be then to put walls up and start to protect myself for the eventuality that this person is going to leave me.
Yeah, okay.
And that's when I started to realize that I would self-sabotage and that's when I was like, something's not right.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, I was probably late 20s when I started to realize that something's not right. And it's not the physical that's the problem. It's something that I need to deal with inside internally.
So did you start to go see a therapist? Like, how did you start to process and stuff like that? I guess.
Yeah. I started to, I saw a therapist, I saw a counselor, and they actually started to unpack the fact that this had been from the previous childhood trauma that I kind of just suppressed. And kind of just, because I didn't want to actually deal with the grief of what had happened to me, I kind of just put it aside and almost put it in a box and then put it in the corner.
I think when it comes to like childhood and traumatic experiences and things like that, you almost as a child don't have the mental capacity, maturity and awareness to process. It's like there's a sense that childhood trauma remains until, because you hear so often it's at that late 20s, early 30s, particularly for guys.
Yeah.
It's almost that we finally hit a point of maturity and we're self-aware enough to go, oh, I've not dealt with that.
Yeah.
Something's not going on. And it could be, if someone's able to help you see, hey, when that happened, maybe and it's often getting to that point, and then there's that revelation sort of moment, often with a counsellor who's able to help surface what's underneath that we can't see.
Yeah.
And then you find the 30s is people processing all of those things. So,
well, I remember you were talking even last week, you were talking about like when you're in your 20s, you feel invincible.
Totally.
Like physically you feel invincible, but I think it's the same with the mental side of things as well. Is like if someone offends you in your early 20s, you're like, oh, who cares? Like you get over it pretty quickly.
It's true. Yeah.
Maybe the older we get, we kind of process that more. Like, what did I do to offend this person? We tend to really get more thoughtful about what's the situation that we have. And I think the thought behind that then leads to the fact that we're like, oh, okay, there's more to this than the fact of just being like, so-and-so maybe said something that hurt my feelings. Like, why did it hurt my feelings?
Digging under.
Yeah. So I think we become, and that's the maturity that you're saying, Nate, is like when we get older, it's that invincibility kind of just, you tend to think, okay, well, I'm not invincible. Like I'm a person, the humanity side, I've heard you use that word a lot.
You get in touch with yourself more too, don't you? Like you do start to understand, like you start to see your behaviors and understand like hopefully maybe, I don't know, you start to understand stuff's going on differently maybe, I don't know. I think life just wears you down a little bit.
Yeah, it's true. Like that invincibility is actually, it's not like an authentic self. It's actually an unknown self. There's, it's almost like, I don't want to say it's a facade, but it's not actually the really you. It's that as guys, I think we don't really know us. And so
We're discovering ourselves to some degree, aren't
and
we?
so
Yeah.
as we start to learn ourselves, that invincibility starts to kind of diminish a little bit, and you become like, oh, I'm not that. Oh, that I get wounded, I get hurt about that, or whatever. Oh, I have strengths. Oh, I have weaknesses. But you just don't know yourself enough when you're younger, and so the natural state is more that blanket invincibility, but it's actually a sign of a lack of self-awareness more than I think true awareness leading to invincibility.
But
It's
even
just
now
lack.
in our I'm in my late 30s, you're not aware of I think I'm way more self-aware than I ever have been in my life. But I'm still not aware of the things that I'm not aware of. I don't know the things that I don't know.
Yeah.
And things still sneak their head up above. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, I didn't realize that was something I had to deal with. I thought I was self-aware.
Yeah.
What's going on here? I wasn't aware of that one.
But
And it kind of pops up out of nowhere.
And I don't know, maybe you wrestle this out, right? But I think there's two aspects of self-awareness in that. The self-awareness of being aware that something has popped up.
Yeah.
Like being aware of self, as opposed to defining self-awareness as I know every single minute detail of me.
Oh, yeah, it's
Which
impossible.
we'll never arrive at that.
No,
So
no.
if that's our concept of self-awareness, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, I think a better understanding and approach to it is I understand my inner self, who I really am, enough that I can recognize when stuff pops up.
Yeah.
And that's really the goal, to be able to recognize, oh, I'm angry. Why am I angry?
Why am I angry?
I'm triggered. Why am I triggered? Oh, I've got this underlying anxiety. Why?
Yeah.
The recognition of self, I think that's super important.
And acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A small example, just based on what you're saying there is, for me, I've realized now that, so I have that obviously insecurity sometimes where I'm like, for me, it's self-worth, like we've said. So I will ask my wife, are you okay? So I'm asking her the question, is she okay? But actually what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the validation that I haven't done anything wrong to her to make her upset. So that I've now realized when I ask her, okay, what is my motivation for asking that question? Is it because I genuinely want to know if she's okay, or is it because I'm trying to reinforce my own security in it?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're meaning with that whole self-aware, is being self-aware to say, what is the motivation behind what I'm doing here?
Yep. That's a huge part of it, man.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I think for me, going back to obviously what we were talking about, is I've come to realize that the mental side of things affects my physical, if I can make it.
Yeah, okay.
If I can say that, because when I'm in the right frame of mind, when I am in a healthy frame of mind, the physical kind of naturally flows for me. And for other people, it might be the other way around. For some people, it might be, well, if they go to the gym, therefore they think better and they feel better.
Yeah.
I think they go hand in hand, to be honest with
Totally.
you.
We were talking about this a bit earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like that idea of this self-feeding cycle.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
feel good.
Yeah.
So when you're not like when your mental space is healthy, it's almost as if you make better decisions and your disciplines are in place, and the discipline of getting out of bed to go for the run or whatever it is that feeds into that physical side. It's easier when your mental space is healthy, which then produces, you go to the gym or you go for the run, that produces that feedback loop of positivity and all of those things. But getting started can be quite difficult.
Yeah, you can I guess starting at the mood. Some people say mood follows action.
Yeah.
So start getting active, and your mood's going to improve.
Yeah.
But the vice versa, what you're saying for your story is also true, which is action follows mood. Like if you get your mental right, you're going to be acting in a different way. You're going to be acting in a positive way.
Yeah, I think for me, and the whole reason why I say that is because, let's bring it back to the biblical terms, for instance, is that for me, God says he will transform your mind. And he doesn't say he's going to transform your body. Because I think that happens maybe, obviously he talks about when we go to heaven one day, he'll give us a new body and stuff like that. And that's not to say God isn't a God who will heal the body itself.
Absolutely.
But he transforms your mind and your way of thinking in order to then affect everything else. Because from your mind, that's where I think majority of your decision making in the physical kind of comes.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that for me is why I find I've pushed into the mental health side of things quite profoundly, is that I think that is where a lot of people ignore. And let's use the example of you have a car and you're going to send it in for a service. Do you wait for it to be falling apart before you send it in for a service?
That's a good point. Sometimes.
So
that's been most of my life. I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like if you do that,
that weird noise in the engine, you're like,
what's the cost? What's the cost of that then?
Oh,
the cost is so much greater if you have to send it in and replace an engine than if you just have to go in for an oil change.
Totally. It's like you don't just brush your teeth when they're like falling off.
Yeah.
You know, like we maintain it.
It might not necessarily be going to therapy or counseling, for instance, because some people that's very obviously taboo and it's extreme, and there is that stigmatism of it's quite intense to be.
Totally.
For others, it might just be connecting with someone that you trust and sharing. This is my thoughts. Yeah. I mean, you and I connect, Simo, once a month, and I'll download to you what my thoughts are, what's happening, and it could be totally random, and we laugh most of the time.
Just have a good time.
It's chilled. But I walk away from that and I go, whoa, I feel so much better because I know that I've got someone who values me and trusts me, and I have that connection. That if something goes wrong, I know I can come to you and have a chat with you.
I think that's a good point for our listeners. I think just keeping everything to yourself. Like if there's going to be a first step, maybe if a counselor or a therapist is going to be too intense, it's too big of a step. Speak to somebody. You know, like there's obviously great initiatives going around the Hunter, like Talk to Me Bro and things like this. But the thing I want to kind of get into the conversation a little bit about is there might, because there's a lot of Christians dudes listening to this podcast. There might be non-Christians, I'm not sure. But a lot of people be like, oh, well, shouldn't you just pray more? You know what I mean? Like, and I think from a spiritual point of view, like we've been talking a lot about these very practical, I could imagine someone's listening to this going, oh, but you haven't talked about all these spiritual things, but we've been talking about in the last couple of podcasts, we're an integrated person.
Yeah.
And so working on our mental health by seeing a counselor or seeing a therapist or talking to people is not like unspiritual, right? Or,
how many hours have you got, man? I could honestly, I could unpack. We could
delve deep on this, couldn't we?
Because I think it.
But short and sweet.
I'm probably similar to you, right? Like I think this is everything. Like in our salvation, our spirit was completely born again, right? We didn't, tend it, keep it in good health.
Yeah.
We can get a wounded spirit, all those things. We got to be aware of our spirit. But the entire place of our transformation is our soul space, which is it's actually fueled by our mind, right? We can't deal with emotions without dealing with thoughts. Thoughts cause and create emotions. And so, people are like, I got an anger problem. I need some prayer. Yes, you need some prayer.
Prayer's good. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
the
it's
actual place of transformation for you is in the mental arena. I would go as far as to say, and someone will definitely pull this out and throw it around, but every single space in which a believer is lacking transformation in their life, I think short of, and this is a totally tangent, short of like demonic oppression, right? Every other space is linked to something to do with their mind.
Yes.
Shane, you were saying before that scripture, right? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We cannot seek a path of transformation that does not involve assessing, renewing
our mind.
We have to go there.
Some people might be like, oh, that's God's job.
No.
That's God's job to renew my mind.
Partnership.
Okay, it's partnership. Delve a little bit deeper on that. I think this is really key for some people.
Well, I mean,
I don't want to take over. We've got you here for a reason, man. This is your space.
You go to the gym, and a PT can give you your workout program and make you feel like he can tell you all the right things. But if you don't put into action what the PT is telling you, then what's the point of the program?
That's a good point.
And you can go to the gym with all the best intentions, but if you don't have the program to follow, you might be doing the completely wrong thing. So like you say, it is a partnership. The one has to affect the other. And so, yes, God's got to obviously come to the party for us, and he does in so many ways. all the time where he's saying, I'm going to offer you the opportunity, but it's the age old process. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make a drink.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's a partnership. It's a
need
relationship. It's
you
not.
need to be able to say, I'm wanting God to transform my mind. And therefore the way I think is not right. For instance, if maybe it's the way I think about money or the way I think about health or whatever it is, it needs to change. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today about over a cup of coffee, and we were talking about some of the struggles that he's going through, and he kept talking about the person he was having the struggles with. And I said, you can't affect the person that you're talking about. What you can affect is what you and the way you respond
how you
to
respond,
that. And from that may then change or transform the way the person then reacts to you. But
you can't live expecting to other people to transform.
But you can only affect what you are capable of affecting.
Yeah.
That's so true. I think a lot of people get caught up. They like trying to stay in control of like other people's actions or thoughts about them. It's just like, it's going to kill and fill your mind with so much stuff. You can only control stuff that's in here. But coming back, I want to come back to what you're saying, Nate. I know that you've probably got a book on this, I reckon. There's probably a book in you on this.
I think so. It has been such a massive part of my journey. I have a family history of mental health, anxiety, and I have struggled significantly with anxiety. And the thing with like an illness, if you have a chronic illness, right? I mean, I've also had physical chronic illness. There's a management of it, but there is also a reality at times that it always has the potential to flare up. And so that's a reality for me with my mental health. I've got great techniques and all sorts of things, and there's a lot of practical conversation to be had around that. But probably the last 15 years of my walk with God has been diving into and realizing the significance of the mental space. I feel like every book I've read, I've just been diving into how my mind works, the influence it has over me, the reality of trauma, of childhood trauma, the power of how I think and how that affects my world, and seeing that come alive in Scripture, and the way Scripture, the way biblical teaching, the way the spiritual part of us interacts with the mental side, and the way God's made us, the way He's made us to be able to partner with Him in renewal and transformation, and how much of that actually occurs not disconnectedly in the spirit space, which I think is often how we've approached it in church. And I'm all for. I mean, I make altar calls every Sunday.
We're Pentecostals.
Come down, man. I'll pray for you.
Come on, fire of God.
And I believe in the power of God to break different things off people's lives. But I also believe in what we see in Scripture of the journeys of transformation. And they're two different things. But I've read countless books. I've spent time with therapists, counselors, and I would 100% advocate for them. They will help you to do the digging. Like, some people are naturally self-analytical. And so that's really helpful in being able to ask yourself the questions of why, what's the root of this? Because we often try to deal with stuff on the surface. But the root is often much deeper.
And they help you kind of get
to the root and
understand, I guess.
And that's where you get the spiritual can then overlap, right? I remember seeing a Christian counselor, and she said if you went and saw a doctor for a infection, he'd give you antibiotics. Take these 3 times a day. And she's like, this is the lie that you're believing about yourself in this particular space. She goes, you need to get some spiritual antibiotics. Get 3 scriptures that are truth. And you need to read them 3 times a day. And so I'd set a reminder on my watch 3 times a day. I'd pull out the particular scriptures that were speaking, what we say
directly into that situation that you're saying.
This is what's locked up in my thinking about myself. And I did that for a process of 6, 12 months. And I look, I'm going all over the place here.
No, this is good. I think this is very helpful.
I'm fully convinced that as believers we should be engaging in the mental health space from the point of view that we don't just believe in management, we believe in transformation.
So cool.
That's so good.
And you're not saying a therapist or a counselor is going to transform you. It's almost
No.
it's more of it's a tool in the journey.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
It's a tool like you can't invite God into an area that you're unaware of. And
That's
so
right.
if you've got a therapist that's helping dig
so
you down,
helpful for
this is what's going
awareness
on.
and for management techniques, because often we have to brace a broken bone for a while so that we can do the work of healing in the body.
Yeah, it's
it's
great
very similar
illustration.
mentally. Sometimes we need to learn like breath management techniques.
Yeah.
There's because I would have anxiety, I would have panic attacks. And so one of the techniques that I was taught in managing a panic attack is to look around the room and articulate in your mind, that's a green plant. Okay, that's a black. So very
Yeah.
And so the techniques can be super beneficial in minimizing the impact whilst you're working on the transformation. Because that transformation can take years. Dealing with some
that's
of the
right.
result of trauma and what we believe about ourselves because of trauma, it can be a lifelong journey of trying to transform that space, that belief of self or that belief about God or belief about the world. They're the three areas.
And that's the transforming of the mind. That's the sanctification. That's what's
one
happening
thing
while
can
we're
be
here.
20, 30 years of you knowing I have to keep hitting that space with truth because I have a deeply, and the level of trauma will often be linked to the depth of the belief that's been created. And so for people that go through major trauma, this sounds very negative, but their transformation might be 30, 40 years long. Now, it might also be come to an old school, God does something miraculous.
Yeah, you want to hold both. You want to hold with faith.
Totally.
You want to hold God totally has the ability
God
to change
can.
this in a
100%.
moment, in an instant.
And I have experienced that.
You have, yeah. With
in
some physical
both
healing.
in the physical and in the space of addictions and all sorts of things.
But then it's not that if God doesn't come
miraculous
through
moments.
in the moment that he's not faithful, that he's not
That's right.
he's still on that journey with you and most likely he wants to use your testimony and your story
Totally.
in a way that's going to help set other people free as well,
Yeah,
I guess. We're running out of time. We could keep, there's so much we could delve into on this. I mean, it feels like we only got Gasada because we could do like a Joe Rogan length podcast, like 3 hours long.
3.5 hours long.
I'm not against it. I don't know if people would listen to the whole thing, but you get, when you have that amount of space, you really settle into, you can get some good aspects of conversations going. But we don't have that. You've got to get going shortly. But before we finish, Shane and Pastor Nate, I'd like to hear in this realm, I think it's a really great conversation. It's been awesome hearing, just learning a little bit more about you, Shane, knowing, I love that you are unearthing and making a bit more normal this idea that, hey, we need to talk about our mental health.
Yeah.
And we need to share stories. We need to, talk to each other. We need to not just keep to ourselves. And I think that's really powerful. If you could leave people that are listening with your top 3 things, rapid fire,
Okay.
that you would encourage them in, what would that be? And same for you, Pastor Nate, maybe your top 1 thing, because we don't have heaps of time. And if you can't have top 1, maybe top 2. If you find one,
I'm on the pod all the time.
but we'll do top 3 rapid fire. What are
Top
3
three.
things you'd leave with someone just to encourage them?
First thing
area.
is, I would say community. Who are you surrounding yourself with?
That's really
Because
good.
that is huge when it comes to your mental space. Are you surrounding yourself with the right people, with positive people, with people who think the way you think, and are there through the thick and the thin and not fickle? So that's the one thing I'd probably say is huge for me is I would love to surround myself with people that are going to tell me the truth, but in a way that is going to be loving and supportive. So community is a big one. Secondly, meditation. And I say meditation because it is a biblical process, principle.
It's
God
absolutely
says, meditate
biblical.
on the word.
Yeah.
Because when you meditate on the word, what you think becomes reality.
That's great.
So if we consistently thinking about negative thoughts and thinking about things of the world and the struggles, ultimately that's going to lead to how we live and affect our health at the same thing. So for me, it's like meditate on the word, focus on the positive, make sure I live with a grateful attitude, because gratitude and resentment can't be in the same sentence.
Yep.
And then third thing I would probably say is have the courage to speak up when you are struggling.
It's really good, man.
It's great.
Because, we hear that saying it's not weak to speak. I almost want to say that if you're not speaking, that's actually a lot weaker.
It's great. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
So have the
a good
courage
challenge.
if you are struggling, whether it's a friend, a family member, whatever it is, there's only something beneficial that's going to come out of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Especially if you speak to the right people. And that's why I say community is probably number one for me.
Yep.
Because if you speak to the right people, they're going to make sure that they get you what you need to do in order to.
So good, man.
So community,
meditation,
meditation,
to think about the right things.
truth, the word of God, and speak to someone.
Yeah, courage to speak
Great.
up.
Courage to speak out. Love it. Pastor Nate.
I think the last one that Shane said is super key. Like, I think sometimes we get a notion that we're not doing okay, and we don't think we can talk about it until we know why. And I would just say you don't need to know why.
It's really good.
Just getting better at saying to someone, "Hey, I'm just not doing well."
I think that's really powerful.
I think we talked a little bit about the stigma around mental health, and I think part of that stigma is the fear of what is underneath. And if we can get rid of that and start with just acknowledging I'm not doing well, I think that more people would take a small step on the journey rather than it feeling like it needs to be such a massive step. So I would just say, just let someone know, and you don't need to know why.
And that's really powerful. I think of my own life. I like to have things figured out before I take action. And there's been instances like that where it's like, I'm not doing well and I don't know why.
Well,
it's like,
often,
it's really crazy when you don't know why. And you're like, I don't know why I'm not doing well, but you feel like, because you feel like you got to talk to someone, you're like, I'm not doing well. The first question is going to be like,
why?
Why? And you're like,
What's
well,
going on?
I don't know why.
But I mean, that's the whole premise that if you say it often is that you don't have to have everything together to come to God. It's the same thing that
who comes to God with everything together?
No one.
Jesus, that's it. Like
that is literally the premise of why you come, is because we are struggling and we need God.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same in this aspect, is that you're not going to have everything together in order then to go and say, okay, now I need help.
Yeah.
So just go. Take the first step. I love sorry, I'm going to end with this and then you can pick me off.
Now you're our guest, man.
Yeah.
You should.
Come on.
My whole thing is there's two different names for this, but there's the 1 degree or the 1% club.
Okay.
And it's, you start at a point and you draw a line and you then move that line 1 degree to the left or to the right and then you draw the line up. The further that line gets, the wider that gap becomes.
Yeah.
And that's like with any decision that we make. We can change such a small aspect of the way we think, the way we do things, or even the decision making that we have, maybe the way we respond to something. If we change that 1 degree and we continue to change 1 degree, later on in life, we might not see the immediate effects right now, but later on is where we see the massive impact of that decision.
You're going to see that gap shrink, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm all for, you don't have to make massive leaps and bounds, but just change something by 1% or 1 degree.
I think that's really good. I think that'll give people confidence because we want everything to be fixed. And we look at the comparison things real. We're looking at Instagram. We're looking at social media. We're looking at all the people we admire and look up to. And we don't know, a lot of these people we don't know. Yeah. And so we go, I just want to be this or that in one foul swoop. But that's not life. That's going to produce stress and anxiety. But if we can have the confidence to accept, acknowledge, take 1% and come to God as a mess. We are a mess all the time.
hot mess.
Just keep coming. I think of that scripture, come boldly into the throne room of grace, right? And no one's coming boldly into that throne room in perfect condition.
Yeah.
You're coming in as a hot mess.
That's right.
That's God. Yeah. God is happy to see the real you, come to God. I love it. This is really good. I think there's some really good takeaways in everything we've discussed. Like any podcast, we could keep going
Totally
deeper into all this kind of stuff. But I really think this is going to bless some people. And it's been great to have you on, man.
Yeah,
thanks for being on the
having me on.
podcast.
I really have enjoyed it. And you guys are doing an incredible job. So keep going.
Oh, thanks, man. What was your pod again?
Leave a Light On podcast. Yeah.
Come on.
Sweet.
Thank you very
Check it
much.
out.
Check it out.
Check it out. And yeah, you guys keep rocking, fighting the good fight.
Come on. We'll catch you next time.